Three simple steps to financial peace of mind. So we've survived the first part of the pandemic. There's more to come. I think we all know that. But September is always, the autumn is always a time just to kind of review. And all I'm going to do is just give you a couple of very, very simple pointers as to what you might be doing. Now, what I find is that most people, or a lot of people, just think, oh, that's all terribly interesting and move on. But some people do want to connect with me, and that's absolutely fine. Please feel free at the end of this to give me a call or send me an email, and we'll spend half an hour together on the telephone so that you can, just get a feel for what you might need to be doing. In my view, well, actually in my experience, all of us tell ourselves stories around money. We don't ever really fully realize what the situation is. We tend not to tell the truth. And I have a little story about a lady and a gorilla, which I hope will illustrate this, and if at all possible, may even amuse you. So a lady goes to the zoo and she stands in front of the gorilla cage, absolutely entranced by this gorilla. She loves the sight of this beautiful creature, big, huge black creature, and he's actually leaning against the bar, snoozing. And she makes the terrible mistake of putting her hand through the bars because she wants to stroke him. And sure enough, he wakes up and causes absolute havoc, crashes through the bars, mauls her to within an inch of her life in about 2 minutes. It takes the keepers to get the tranquilizer dart into him. This woman has been seriously injured. She's barely alive, and she's carted off on a stretcher. 4 days later, her best friend goes to see her in hospital, and she's lying there. She can hardly open her eyes. And her friend says to her, "Oh my goodness, you must be in so much pain." And the woman just kind of slightly opens her eyes and murmurs, "Pain? You don't know what this feels like. He doesn't call, he doesn't phone." Could it be, do you think, that she might be deceiving herself just a little bit? So I wonder, thank you for laughing, Peter. Yeah, of course, the other thing about not being able to see yours, I don't know whether you're smiling at that. So, okay, so all I want to do this afternoon is give you these three simple steps, and you might go, yeah, or you might go, actually, that's an idea. And I hope you do. I hope it's helpful. First off then, what do we need to do? What are these three steps? We need to have some clarity around the place. When we've got some clarity about what we want, we need to know what to focus on to make it happen. And then we need to understand that time is the key to all of this stuff. There's no, Tarzan thing, he's standing there in the flames and with 1 leap he was free. It doesn't work that way. You set the path and it takes time for it to happen. Let's talk about clarity. What I mean by clarity is that we all get in a bit of a muddle, don't we? We don't really understand what we're supposed to be doing, why we should be doing it, and so on and so forth. So clarity is about creating elegant simplicity. Now, a good example of that was my recent client in the last 6 months or so, Professor Diane Kemp. She came to me and said, look, I think my retirement, she's 59 years old, going to be an absolute disaster. And I just don't really understand what I've done and what I need to do and all the rest of it. She believed that she would sort of go into this twilight zone. At some point, they would retire her and she'd have this small pension and life would sort of come to an end. So I said, well, that's probably not going to be the case. So what we did was we found out what really matters to her. And there are two things that matter to her. She wanted to have sufficient money, not surprising, but she also wanted to make some really significant gifts to her children, because, and by children, I mean they're in their sort of late 20s, early 30s now. She wanted to start them off on the property ladder because she could see how difficult it was for young people these days to make a start on owning their own home. And she didn't really believe she could do this. So what we did is we worked together, and we found out how much her pension was going to be and all that. Bottom line is she could afford to retire now if she wanted to. She doesn't particularly want to, but she loves the idea that she can. She can pay off the mortgage, which she's already done. She didn't know she could do that. She didn't realize it was possible. I know, but there you go. And she'll have sufficient income in retirement, and she can make significant, and by significant I mean really decent sized gifts to her children. So she's delighted. And she said a nice thing about me at the bottom. So if those of you who have not been listening to me, which is fine, and want to read that's there. So we achieved some measure of clarity for her, and she had her version of peace of mind. Now, focus. You know what we all do? We miser on about stuff we can't control. We read the news and we worry about the weather, we worry about the political situation, we worry about this existential fear that the virus is, and so on and so forth. The stuff we can control. We can control our behavior around the virus. We can do certain things with masks and washing our hands and keeping clear of people and isolating and so forth. And we can also do a bunch of things around our money. We can be clear about what we're spending, our expenditure. We can have some kind of a budget. We can understand how much we're investing, and we can make an effort to understand what we're being charged for those investments, and more about that later. So those are the things we can control, and that's what I want you to focus on. Now, in this particular case was a lady called Sarah, who, mid-50s, owning her own company in partnership with someone else, 50% shareholders, works incredibly hard, wasn't really sure and isn't sure now, especially after the pandemic, whether or not her business is ever going to be worth anything, but pretty desperate to retire, just wanted to leave, just wanted to know that if the day came, she could walk towards the door, turn around, wish everyone farewell, and leave. And financially, she just didn't feel she could do that. Now, her problem, we went through it all together. We made an analysis of her expenditure. We worked out how much money she would need in retirement. We found out where she was in terms of achieving that. She had a little bit of rental income. She had a small pension and so forth. She didn't have enough pension. So that's what we've done. We focused on that. Pensions are a very boring name, but actually it's a phenomenal investment, all sorts of tax benefits and goodness knows what. And she had control over the company, so she could funnel money out of the company into a pension. Absolutely marvelous. She's got a 5-year plan. She knows where she's going. She's extremely happy. Her version of peace of mind around money. I can't overemphasize this. The way I connect with people is to invite them to pay me some kind of monthly retainer. It's a very simple monthly retainer. And the reason I do that is because it makes it easy for them. It also gives my cash flow. It's good for them because we do a lot of work up front, but they pay for it over a period of time. But there's a really much more important reason than that. And that is, we aren't just going to do something and it's all going to be all right. It doesn't work that way. We're going to do something and then stuff's going to change. Or you need to review it, or you need to think about it again, or the circumstances around you change. So it's all about having that long-term connection and dipping into it once or twice, sometimes 3 times a year. As I said here, the world changes, we lose direction. You don't need me to tell you that. We've just gone through the most extraordinary change. Some of us have been relatively unaffected. A lot of us have been very affected. Now, what do we do now? And our finances are an integral part of that. And in this case, this was a chap called Ian. Now, I've been working with Ian for 10 years. He started in 2011. And when I came across him, he was still charging up and down motorways, believing that he needed to earn £800 a day and goodness knows what else. He was driving himself mad. I showed him with something called a lifetime cash flow model, and I apologize for the jargon, but it is a helpful way of seeing where you are. And that's one of the key things that we do for people. But he could, in fact, retire. He could stop working, no problem at all. And so he did. And the next thing that happened, almost within a couple of years, is that his wife, Jackie, got a very a life-threatening disease. She has a time limit. We all have a time limit, but she knows how long she's going to live. So that's a huge change in direction for them. And financially, it meant various things. It meant that they wanted to spend lots of money doing stuff while she still could, but it also means that now that she needs care, they need to be able to afford that and so on and so forth. So again, this kind of long-term engagement is so important because your finances need to come along with your with your life. And he was kind enough to say a couple of nice things about me there. Okay, so there are two kinds of people listening to this presentation. One of them has got a financial advisor, the other guys haven't. So you're one of those people. For those of you that have got a financial advisor, I just like to kind of draw your attention to a couple of things. I'm a bit of a sort of, how can I put this, poacher turned gamekeeper. I used to be a financial advisor. I know how the business works. I know loads of stuff. I've been doing it for, when I say I know loads of stuff, that sounds terribly arrogant, doesn't it? But you know what I mean. I know quite a lot of stuff about finances. And I do know that most people don't understand what they're being charged by a financial advisor. Most financial advisors put a charge of 1% per annum on. Who's that coughing? I mean, I think that's a coughable thing. 1% per annum is you're quite right. It's pretty serious. Let me show you what that means. Let's imagine that you have an investment portfolio or pension, whatever, of around £200,000. Now, that's not such an enormous sum of money, not these days, I'm afraid to say. And you assume that it's going to grow at 6% per annum. Well, in 15 years' time, just assuming it grows at 6% per annum, you'll have £480,000 there. However, if your financial company, your financial advisor has been withdrawing 1% per annum, that will effectively mean that the return on the investment has been 5% per annum. The cost to you of that 1% per annum charge is £65,000. Now, I make no judgment as to whether or not your financial advisor is or isn't worth £65,000. I'm just simply asking you to say, that seems a lot, maybe, I don't know. You would have to make that judgment for yourself. So for those of you with, I'm just throwing that away there. If you want to talk about that more, quite happy. For those of you who are perhaps don't have financial advisors because you don't think you've got enough money and you perhaps got a modest income, my service is really focused on people like yourselves. I really want to talk to you about what you mean, what financial independence actually means to you and when you'd like to achieve it. I want to talk about how much money you're saving or more likely not saving. I want to help you to prioritize things. And I want you to also recognize that actually there's no way forward without a budget. We don't have to make this a terrible thing, but you need to get control of your expenditure. It's the key to everything. And of course, as they always say, and this is so right, you must spend less than you're earning. I can also help you to make sure that you never run out of money, and we can find what it is that would create a sense of financial well-being for you. I rather like this phrase. I don't know what you think. Don't touch my money. Hold my hand. Now, I'm going to do the one thing that I've always criticized others for doing, which is to read from the slide. Sorry about this. Understanding what you want and focusing on achieving it is harder than it sounds. The mysteries of budgeting and investment are not mysteries at all once you know how. Most people need a little guidance and someone they can trust, someone to help them see things from a different perspective. If I have anything at all to offer anybody, it's that. That's what I try to do. So how do we help? Well, we find out where you are. I was talking about that, this whole idea of the cash flow thing, where you can actually see how far you are getting towards financial independence. We ask you the right questions, or I ask you the right questions, and I listen to the answers, so we discover what's important and what you want, and then we create a plan. That's where we get focused. And all I do is hold your hand. I don't get involved in your money, which is probably very good news, but I make sure that you're doing the right things. And we get you there to that point of having peace of mind around your finances. And we do it by a simple, affordable monthly retainer. So you know exactly what the whole thing is costing you. There are no kind of hidden charges. I'm done. I do have something to entice you. I've been talking to a marketing person, and they said, what you need, Nicholas, is a lead magnet, for God's sake. I mean, do I need a lead magnet? Anyway, for those of you that are interested, I have something called a magic number spreadsheet. It's a brilliant way of budgeting. I am happy, because you are all lovely members of the Family Business Practice, to give that away completely free. And the lead magnet thing is that presumably I get to have your email address, and I'm not sure what I will do with it, but I will probably write to you and say hello and can I be of any help.